Good afternoon, Sean Childs, fantasy analyst on Substack.com and Fantasy on SI. My other content goes on it, and this is my second run through the NFBC main event free agent report. Been a busy couple of weeks just for outside things going on, and running out of time. And I'm later than I thought I would be even today because I had to do something unexpected for the home house. So here's a look at the my screen. I will do my same thing. I'll walk through the player pool for the NFBC main event, and I'm using a league that I drafted on Tuesday night in Las Vegas. And basically, I'm gonna, if you look at the tab up top, I'm gonna use the player stats to show under this column, player stats. I want to see what the ownership is of all the positions and go through it and to see if there's options. In this particular league, I have Sean Murphy and Francisco Alvarez as my two catchers. So I won't be bidding on any catchers in this league. And I just know that there's probably not a ton. I know that Luis Campusano was called up. He was doing pretty good at AAA. He's a guy with, I think he's had 488 at bats over the last 3 seasons at in the majors with 68 runs, 75 RBIs, like 16 home runs. That's pretty good catcher if he could stay. Didn't strike out much, reasonable strikeout rate. Played pretty well at AAA this year. He's at 322, 6 home runs, 17 RBIs, and just a guy that, should be in the majors and be given an opportunity. But unfortunately, they signed, I think Martin Maldonado, kind of a defensive catcher that, hits for low batting average but can hit a home run, and Elias Diaz, who's hitting like 210 with minimal production, and not that he couldn't be a little bit better. So I think Campusano, what is he? Let's see here. So basically, he'd be probably a 0% owned, but I'll switch it to team just to see where it is, because I know he's probably going to be one of the better ones. So even Diaz is 14% owned. Maldonado is 2% owned, and he's not owned. So as we saw the last couple of weeks in the for the catchers that got called up in this particular league that I'm in, Bo Naylor got dropped, which is kind of surprising. So he had a couple home runs this week, maybe even 3. But Ramirez went in this league for 203, runner-up 188 the week before, and the catcher for the White Sox, Edgar Quero, 72-31. So I think Campusano's been around enough that he would fall more in the low range, even in the 30s, especially with Bo Naylor being in the pool, that Bo Naylor would draw a little more attention. And that's kind of a, something I would look at. I would, Campusano, obviously I don't have any reference point of what, what he would go for in open environment, because he's not owned in any leagues and nobody's drafted him. I think even in the NL league, he's not there. So to make this a little easier, I'm going to switch this to week 6 stats and sort by at bats. And this gives you a little better number of, I know that Dylan Dingler guy is 95% owned, and he had a pretty good week. 720 with a home run, 3 RBIs. He'll probably be picked up in 12-team leagues and be an attractive player. So we go down, and the first guy that we hit that's a low percentage own is Freddie Furman. Kansas City last year, he hit for, I think, 271, 40 runs, 6 home runs, and 36 RBIs as a backup player for Salvador Perez when Perez was playing DH a lot. So Perez a little nicked up. Didn't play yesterday. I didn't look at the lineup. So, Furman can sneak a home run once in a while, hit for average. He's probably going to be really, really short money, though, because he doesn't have a clear path to playing time. Bo Naylor, 93% owned. He's in this league, 3 home runs this week. And when I looked at it last week, he was on a team that I had to try to upgrade my catcher, and his approach will look a little better. I think he only had 2 strikeouts last week. So when you're looking at some of these players, you're like, what'd they do? All right, so he had 14 at bats last week with one hit. Looks pretty disappointing, but he only struck out 3 times. The week before, 2 and 13. I was like, wow, that's a little better approach than the beginning of the year. He had 8 strikeouts and 23 at bats. So he looked like he was progressing. So when you see something like that, you're like, maybe I shouldn't cut this guy. I thought this guy before the season could hit 20 home runs, double-digit steals, batting average risk. Not sure we're going to hit a lineup. So I think that he would be a a guy that would probably go in the Quiro range, maybe in the 60s or 70s in this league. And like I said, I'm not going to be bidding on him. Patrick Bailey, I can see why he get kicked to the curb. He hasn't done much, but he, could be an upgrade over some people at their second catcher. Let's see, there's really not much else there as far as somebody that I think that, I guess Danny Jansen's been kind of a bust all year. A fly ball hitter, hasn't driven anybody in. I thought the home runs would be there. It just hasn't happened yet, but he could get streaky. And Connor Wong, 75% owned. He'll be out there in a few leagues, and he did a little bit of everything last year, but not too exciting a catcher. Just pretty much maybe Furman and Camposano at first base. I'll leave it in the week 6 category. Just like I said, it's easy. If I sort by at bats, I can see if somebody's showing up in here that's got a little bit of value. The Eric Wagaman guy got picked up in a few leagues coming into last week. I thought that his bids were reasonable. I can switch to that, but I'm not really think that he's a guy that you want to fight for. So, 1 RBI, 2 runs for the week, 5 for 20. Nothing really exciting there, but more of an at-bat filler. Mont Wade, get a little bit of playing time, 9% owned, 3 for 15, a run, 3 RBIs, strikeouts 1 out of 3. So the strikeout rate's not 33% because it goes on at plate appearances, but still pretty high. Emmanuel Valdez, really a second baseman filling in for an injury. So we'll keep going down here, and let's see, it's just not it's really tough if you're challenged at the corner positions, trying to find an upgrade for especially home runs. And I will say that I am right not too sharp on this. So this is the interesting guy right here, Krim, and then Blaine Krim. I didn't write about him just for being out of the house and doing multiple things, but the Rangers sent down Berger from this year. He had 20. They got him from Miami last year. Had 20-something home runs, 7 minors. So Krim's a guy that 19th round draft pick, nothing special about it, but he was playing pretty good at I know at AAA this year. He was hitting .313, over 115 at bats, 17 runs, 7 home runs, 25 RBIs, 1 stolen base. Walk rate probably about league average, maybe a little bit better. Strikeout rate was reasonable, but he's been at AAA for the last 4 seasons. 1,166 at bats, hit 49 home runs, 201 RBIs, 197 runs, and 9 steals. Walk rate was probably about 11%, just guessing it by eyeballing it, and the strikeout rate was probably 18-19%, pretty good. But gets an opportunity in the majors, but actually will they put him in the lineup every day? I'm not 100% sure. But he's worth a flyer. Probably a guy that's going to be only available, maybe worth a shot in 15-team leagues or bigger. 12-teamers, you have to see if he's going to get enough playing time. They called him up the other day, and he's been on the team for four games, and he's only had 3 at bats. He struck out 2 times, so that's not going to be too enticing to go, run out and add him to a team. So, but he does have a little bit of talent. Can it show at a major league level? I'm not sure there. So, but that's a name that you have to probably pay attention to. Villar, and I'm just gonna in this league, the Jack Cangeloni guy is in the pool. He's a free agent in 61% of main events, 2% start, which is kind of surprising. See how he's in the minors. He's played pretty well over the last week or so, and I'm just going to go. I wrote up the infielders, outfielders, and starting pitchers earlier today. So I'm going to just kind of skim to that just to show what it looks like. So he was over his last 13 games at AA. So could he potentially skip from AA to AAA? Yeah, that's possible due to his talent. 20 for 48, 10 runs, 2 home runs, 12 RBIs and a steal. 8 walks, pretty good, and 11 strikeouts. So his approach, was improved a little bit. In college, he was really, really impressive player. Last 2 seasons, 530 at bats, hit 68 home runs, a bunch of RBIs, and just a guy that looks pretty talented. He got drafted sixth overall last year. played a little there. Kansas City has shifted them to outfield a little bit to kind of fill the gaps. Because they're getting nothing. Melendez got sent down, and I think Waters in right field, and he just isn't that good of a player. So he's a guy that you want to keep an eye on as a stash. I don't think he's somebody you want to really kind of fight for. And then the other one I wrote about was Ty France, but I would imagine France is rostered on this team, but I'll just confirm it on Minnesota because it's a 15-teamer. He's 91% owned. He played pretty good 2 of the last 4 weeks, but overall, he's a guy that's, if he hit 20 home runs, that would be a lot. He's probably at this point of his career closer to 15 home runs, and he's not going to draw a lot of big bids. And I'm not going to jockey back and forth to show the bids on players that I don't think that are going to be attractive. Encarnacion Strand, I have him on this roster, but he's been dropped in some leagues. He started swinging the bat, I believe, this week, hit off a tee. So he's progressing, but Marte's played pretty good for Cincinnati. He'll get in the way, but can't. Jomar Candelario got placed on the injured list as well. So that, with a back strain, so that could, basically give Encarnacion Strand another chance. So I know in 12-team leagues, Encarnacion Strand might be there. I really liked him before the beginning of the year. I think that I would try to roster him if I needed somebody at a corner position. But other than that, first base is pretty thin, and that's, like I said, and I'm not really sharp, but I mean, it's pretty, when I go through these leagues, I'll do an AL and NL league, and I'll discover somebody that's got a little bit of bats a little easier because the player pool has nothing there. But if you're looking for, help at, first base, it's just not there right now, at least at the major league level. Second base, I'm going to switch to that, or make sure we're on the week 6 again. At bat, sorting by it. Let's see, 98%. So Sosa from the Cubs, I believe he got sent, got put on the disabled list, or something happened with him. Maybe not. I'm not 100% sure. Let me just look at that. I want to make sure I'm saying the right thing, because I am not sharp on the injury news. No, not. He's not. So Rojas is Josh Rojas got activated from the DL, so he's going to, play at third base. They can put Vargas in the outfield, and then Sosa recently has been. Let me see where he's at here. He's quiet down a little bit, but the last since April 15th, he's played pretty well. 19 for 68. 279, but he's only got 1 home run, 3 RBIs, so the production really not much there. So he's not really a player that's too intriguing as far as upside. Won't cost too much, but he's 30%. The bids won't be that high. This is a player that's kind of intriguing to me, and I picked him up last week in the AL League. He had played 9 games. I knew at the beginning of the week he would get his 10th at second base, and that was a position that I needed somebody. But last week he had 3 home runs, 6 hits over 20 at bats, 4 runs, 4 RBIs. Strikeouts were pretty good. 3 strikeouts, three walks, showing a good plate appearance. He followed up this week with a home run, another 3 runs, 3 RBIs, and a home run, and 5 walks and more strikeouts. So that type of player, he hit a few years back like 23 home runs for I'm trying to think who he was with at the time. Milwaukee, I believe. So let me go to depth charts here in athletics, and so Urias of the A's. So Zach Geloff is started a rehab assignment. I think he's on his 4th game today, so he'll be back soon. So what's going to end up happening is, Luis Urias can shift over to third base. Gio Urshela hasn't really done much this season. And he doesn't have a high ceiling player. He had 1 year that he was okay. He hit 285 back here with 13 home runs, but no home runs, 3 runs, 10 RBIs over 91 at bat. So that's a kind of a natural, easy shift over for the A's. So then you're going to get a player that can qualify at second base and first base. And if Geloff doesn't get it done, second base will get more bats. So even when you're looking at him, he's got 5 home runs, 9 RBIs, 8 runs, nothing too impressive, hitting 259, but 10 walks, 8 strikeouts is a sign of a player that's going to be a little better. Like I said, Milwaukee in 2021, 23 home runs, 75 RBIs, 77 runs. walk rate was over 10%. Followed up next year with 16 home runs, but he got kind of banged up, and then he was just kind of a lost and didn't do anything for a couple of years, and he didn't really have a crazy strikeout rate. I guess 34. I guess he last year with Seattle was a little higher than it had been in the past, because the year before he had 41 strikeouts and 171 5 plate appearances. So, but he's starting off well. A's are scoring a little bit of runs. Probably only a guy that's viable in a deep league, and he's going to give you no speed, but he's going to be a player for me, of interest in certain formats. But if you have an injury at second base, he could potentially fill in. I view him as more valuable at second base than third base, but when you're looking to fill an injury, he might be the best available athlete. He's 53% in the free agent pool in the main event, which means that the people were picked him up last week because they I should go to him to just give you a reference point of what he went for, because he's at least a guy I think that's kind of interesting. So max bid, so he's picked up in a bunch of leagues, a max bid of 26. The highest runner-up was 22.21, and it was 23 to 15. The $26 bid was 9. He had a bunch of lower than $9 to $5 bids, and there was a few of them, some run up. So he did pretty well the second week in a row. I think that he'll probably more being like maybe a low team player, and if somebody has a need, they maybe go in the 20s again, and if somebody really needs something, then he's the best available, maybe in the 30s. So that's just a pretty good reference of what people think of him from last week, and then you got to absorb what happened this week. Is especially when a guy like him, he's a guy that's been around a little bit and kind of forgotten about, and people think that he's not that good, so potentially that he's going to be worth, there's not as going to be as much fight for him. Brooks Baldwin, talked about him a little last week, a little bit of speed that's kind of hidden there, but 2 for 17 over last week, and they had Josh Rojas back, so it gets a little more cloudy. I know he can play the outfield, but it looks like he could lose some playing time. Michael Massey's not really doing much. Thought he had a little more home runs, so pretty much be free if you needed there. Let's go. McNeil's not really doing. Cole Keith showed a little sign. He's he hits 2 home runs last week, 3 RBIs, 2 runs. 2 runs. So that's, let me just make sure I'm in the right column. And 2 runs. So he's a guy that's supposed to have talent. He looked like he was going to be the future first baseman or potentially play first base. Turkelson won the job back, but if he's available in 58% of leagues, he could potentially get hot and be undervalued. I know that for the season, his overall stats are really, like, power-wise, are really kind of down. He's got 2 home runs, so they both came last week. Strikeouts 22 over 81 at bats, probably not that bad. Took 17 walks, showing a pretty good approach. That's pretty enticing. And I know the numbers don't match up, but there is a young player with size, lefty, that can improve. So I would think that he would be a player of interest, and he only qualifies at second base, needs 6 more at first base. So if I needed somebody, I would probably pay for him a little bit more. Maybe only, I think he's got a little more name value. I'm gonna see what happened with him last week. I think that he might go in more like a $30 to $40 player, but so there was 32 interactions with him, drop, and that's Colton Cowser. Sorry that maybe there's less because Colton Cowser was in there. People chasing after him. So I guess there you go, Colt Key. So the top bid, the only person that bid on him last week was $6, runner-up 0. The rest were drops, and he had his best week of the year. And it's funny how these players that you hang on to, and then you finally, you got to cut them for whatever reason, and then they actually do something. It's almost like they're, kind of spying on you a little bit, and you want to make you look bad. Let's see here. Nolan Gorman, 91%, nothing. Jordan Lawler, I wonder if he's in the free agent pool, or what percentage it is, because I think he must be. Oh, maybe he's listed only at shortstop. Yeah, he's 39% on. When he gets called up, that guy's been on fire at AAA. When he gets called up, he's on a team in this league. But when he's called up, he's going to be go for a lot of money. So anybody's got to middle infield problem. He's a guy to keep an eye on, but at the same time, they don't have the clear-cut path for him to get the the at-bats that you want, kind of take advantage of him. But he is talented enough to, once he gets up here, they're going to have to let him play every day because it doesn't make sense for him to be on the bench. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. Second base is not really much. Let me just look and see who the other person I might maybe mentioned. David Hamilton. So I saw that Kristen Campbell end up playing today, but he got a little banged up. So the Red Sox have a first base problem with Tristan Casas. He's got some ligament damage or something, torn something. But he looks like he's going to be out for the season, which is too bad for the Red Sox because I would think that was the guy they were willing to move, hoping to improve their starting rotation somewhere. So can Hamilton get at bats? Maybe Devers plays first base, or who they're gonna slide for first base. I know that Vaughn Grissom, they had pushed him over to first base for insurance a little bit. He played 4 games. He had a little hot streak, but overall his stats aren't that impressive. 286 with 24 runs, 14 RBIs, 3 home runs, 1 steal, over 112 at bats. Or they could go to their young stud Roman Anthony, who had a shoulder problem early in the year, and maybe he could fill in at DH and get Devers at first base, and he would be the impact back. And I think Anthony is probably, I'll say it before I get to the outfield rather than backtracking on him, but I have to believe Anthony's probably owned on, almost every league because he was a popular guy to get drafted. He is 100% owned in the main events, and one person is playing him for some reason. So so that's so that's what so Vaughn Grissom, but I thought maybe Hamilton could get some at bats. He played a little better over his last 3 games. 4 for 11, got a hit in every game, 3 runs, 1 RBI, 3 steals. But last year he was the guy that kind of really, when he filled in, he had a really, really good run to help fantasy teams up the standings, but then he kind of faded a little bit. So just a player that qualifies at shortstop and second base that you want to keep an eye on, that will probably be relatively free. And I think that he could push you up the standings stolen base if he had a good week and if he could get enough playing time. So I'll jump to third base, same thing, sorted by at bats to see if there's somebody with more playing time that's up there. Brian Hayes, he's I think I did it over his last 50 bats or so. He's hitting like 351 at bats, I believe. He's hitting 314, but he hasn't scored a run, which is really, really hard to do. And he has minimal RBIs, but he's a guy that's kind of a ground ball hitter. You thought that he came to the majors with a little bit of speed for third base, and that would be an advantage, but really hasn't materialized. I had him a couple years ago in the Cutline Championship, and he really kind of played well in September and helped me like push up in the top 5 in the standings, and I got a pretty good check out of that. But he does have talent, but 16% owned, and even if he's owning those other 16% leagues, he's not going to cost a lot of money because he's got no home runs, he's got no runs. So the people want to see the whole package of counting stats. Brooks Lee played a little better recently. I know Royce Clayton should be back soon. I didn't check out his stats because I just knew that he was coming back soon. So I'm kind of behind the times on that. And look at I put Javier Baez down. He's a guy, they paid him so much money, and then he was really disappointing for 1 year and underperformed what the expectations were for the Tigers. But then he was just terrible for 2 years in a row. So this year, nobody wants him in the free agent pool. Nobody started him. I looked at him last week to see if he was going to be somebody I would be interested, because I knew that he was, really close to qualifying outfield. In the outfield position, I had weaknesses on my team. Well, when I looked at his hard hit, his hard hit rate, or no, exit velocity, the exit velocity, it was really, really poor. It was like 86 miles an hour. I'm like, wow, he's not making really good contact, but he seemed like he was playing a little bit better. Well, last week he did something. He had 3 home runs and a home run in 3 straight games. He's got, I think, a 5-game hitting streak, but out of over 7 games, he sat probably 2 games there. But he qualifies at 3 positions. He's done it before. Even when you look at his stats, and I'll go to that because it'll be easier for me to explain this. I listed him as shortstop when I was talking to him, but over the last 2 seasons before this year, he hit 208. Really kind of disappointing numbers, but 782 at bats. He had 20 steals, 15 home runs, 83 15 home runs, 83 runs, 96 RBIs. I mean, it's bad, but could he be like a 70-70 guy? And if he gets a rebound in power and maybe steal double-digit bases, I mean, it's possible. So I can't dismiss him as a helpful player. I mean, and he falls into that hot player of the week category, and people can pick him up in 3 different leagues, 3 different positions. So it might be a little more attraction to him. But I'm gonna look on the fan graphs because I just want to see if his his exit velocity, what it went up to after having a good week, and if it's back in a range where that he was in the past. It's not the be all end all sign for a player, but you like to see that he's making hard contact. So let's see here. Where is he? Minus rate. I guess I'd have to log in to get rid of all these. So his exit velocity, which was 86, is now up to 87. But you could see back in his prime when he was getting a lot more, events, 90.6, 91.1. Even a couple of years later, after the shortened season, it was 90.1. But really, it's really below expectations. But it says a max exit velocity of 106.9. I thought it was a little bit higher for one of those home runs he hit this week. But his hard hit rate still, like, it's only 32%, 32.8%. And last year it was, almost 40%, which was not that far off the last few seasons. He just wasn't, putting the ball in the air, not enough barrels, 43. So it's a little bit better than the past. Ground ball rate, 50%, just hitting a lot of balls on the ground. The fly ball rate has always been kind of a little bit low. So, okay, he's not basically by looking at that, you can see, like, all right, he's worth a flyer. I got a spot, $5 to $15, depending on team need. If somebody wants to pay a lot, they can take it. But he's a guy that hit a lot of home runs in the past, could steal a base, hasn't run much this year, but that he could be surprised. I'll just check him out just to see if people picked him, because I looked at it close last week because I have an outfield spot that I just wanted to do something. So, there you go, 31 to, somebody was willing to pay 31, runner up at 12 and a runner up at 9. Then you get a 21, which could potentially be the same owner. Sometimes when you see it overlap, they got 2 main events or something like that. But 18, 17. So I would think that name-wise, that he still carries that value, and people that don't dig as deep are going to gravitate towards names. So he might go in the 20s this week because he hit the 3 home runs and the 3 positions, and there isn't much out there at some of these leagues in the main events anyway. So, but that's what I would think of him. Let's see, 20%. Jace Jung hasn't really done much in the majors since he got called up. He's in a lot of leagues. That's even if he's in there, and I haven't even really, like I said, I'm behind the curve, selling a house, had to play in a bowl in a league for a championship, which I underachieved, and then played in a pool league and I lost, but we team advanced, and I played in a golf tournament. Meanwhile, not getting enough work done because I had to do about 40 hours of moving somebody out of a house this week, and really kind of changed things a lot for me. But yeah, second base, so the other one that I talked about when I was writing through it that I thought that it was interest was obviously that's one. The Matt Shar one is the one, the other third base option that and I probably jumped the gun. So let me see where Shar is at third base. I know he was drafted and drops in some leagues. So he's 81% owned. So he's, and he's he's going to be there in a few leagues. He's played pretty well recently. He's kind of a buy and hold, but he's over the past week, 12 for 26, 7 runs, 1 home run, 4 RBIs, 2 steals. He has 10 walks, 4 strikeouts, so 43 at bats. Pretty good. He's a player that has, speed, and he's kind of a balanced pros. It looks like he's close to getting another chance. There was a kind of I probably posted on the fantasy on SI that somebody was talking to the hitting coach or somebody on Detroit, and they were saying he was kind of close. So if he was there and you need some speed and third base where you can make it up, I think that he would kind of fall in the buy and hold category, but he's not going to be in very many main events. And I guess let me see if there's anybody else that's players of interest. Juscheller, yeah, it's crazy when you're playing these main events that we all get excited for, and there's just not a lot of players out there. And I guess what's his name from Ramirez from Jose Ramirez got a little nicked up, but I think he was in the lineup today, so there could potentially have been an opportunity at third base for Cleveland, but I think that got squashed with him returning back from so. And the Orioles actually. So Mayo is a guy that's 4% owned. I think I saw that they called him up. So he got called up on yesterday. I missed that because of traveling. I was in the car a lot. So yeah, so he's a guy he's a guy that people fought for last year, and he was doing okay in the minors. I didn't write about him in this report, but I did write him on Fantasy SI just because I didn't see his name right there, and I'm kind of bouncing around trying to be fast. So let me just see let me look at this what I wrote, because he was doing pretty good recently. Actually, you know what? Don't even have to go to that. Sorry, wasting my time here reading up. I can just read you the stats. So go to Mayo. The Orioles is easy. It's the easiest way to get it. I mean, Baseball Reference, I can do it and sort and go to the minor leagues. Okay, but the splits are a little bit better. You can merge them here. So coming into yesterday, so Mayo over the last, we'll just go the last 8 games. He was 10 for 33, 2 home runs, 7 RBIs. Only had 4 strikeouts, 6 runs. For the year, he's up to, I think he was hitting 252, 6 home runs, 22 RBIs, 18 runs, 107 at bats. So that projected over 500 is a 30, close to a 90, 100 RBI guy. Strikeouts a little high, but not that bad. The walk rate was pretty good. Last year he had 22 home runs, over 345 at bats. He's got enough experience now. He's probably over 400 bats at AAA. No, maybe that's, sorry, make that over. Sorry, I don't even say it's probably over 600 because he had there. Let's see. Yeah, so at AAA, yeah, he's got 669 at bats, 115 runs, 40 home runs, 144. So, he's a guy that's going to get a pretty good opportunity. I think Westberg went on the DL and somebody else, but let me just confirm the injuries in Baltimore. And I'm kind of learning on the fly here because, like I said, if I'm out of the box, I'm not really on top of everything until I do my own waiver wire, which I'm not. So, so Westberg went on the DL. They lost Roman Urias as well. So Mayo should get regular at bats. He's going to probably not have his big name value as, the Kurtz guy from Oakland last week, but he is a guy that probably people will fight for. I can imagine people will play triple digits for this guy, especially if there's not much out there. He has some talent. He does have an opportunity. And let me see how long Westberg's out for, just to get. Yeah, so he's hamstring. He doesn't, so they think that he, won't be out that long, but you never know. He could be back in 10 days, but Mayo will get a chance to prove himself. Contending potentially push his way into at bats at DH. And even Mountcastle was a popular guy, this year because of they moved the fence in Baltimore, and I guess he had the most home runs. That would have changed for the different ballpark, but he's only hitting 200 over his first 100 bats, 2 home runs, 8 RBIs. So he is seriously underperformed expectations. So there is an opportunity there. So Mayo is, it's not like you're investing on a guy that's just going to play short term. He could potentially be there long term, and I don't expect him. And I built most of my teams that they have good corner infielders, so I don't think that I will be in that position to go after a guy like that. But he will be the most intriguing guy that I've seen so far, and I didn't write about him, and I apologize for that. But he's somebody's going to pop something for that guy, and I would imagine. The easiest way, if you could look at a league from last year to see when he was called up, you can go to Greg's message board and look up last year's stats. And so he was dropped in one league over here, and somebody bid last week. Smart guy picked him up for $2 unopposed. And let's see who that was. Svidgen, I don't, Fig Gum. I don't know the owner, but smart move. He got him a week early, save himself a couple $100 or $100 or whatever it is, and he's got a guy that potentially put in his lineup and get every at bats, and that's hard to find. And it's a 15 team format, especially with a guy that has talent and he does have upside. So that's what I think at third base is really not much I can see there. Shortstop, I already talked about Baez. There really wasn't much there, and I'll just go back to this thing and see shortstop. Chase Meredith, Meadroth, sorry, butcher names again. Sorry, I apologize for that again. So, but he's for more. I wrote about him for more of this, because when I'm doing the thing for SI, I'm doing it more for a 12-teamer in a shallower league. So he was, went on a disabled list, and he was, he's going to be in there in those short roster formats and in 12-teamers a lot. I guess Trey Sweeney played a little bit better last week. He had a home run. Did something. I believe he had a home run the week before. No, he did not. So, but 9 strikeouts. So he's getting, Baez could shift back to there. He's just really not done much there. So there's replacement value there. So what is Detroit going to do at shortstop? But at bat wise, he's getting some playing time. So, but he only would cost like $1. So J.P. Crawford's been pretty good over the last couple of weeks. Showed a little bit more power. Let's see here, 2 home runs last week, 1 this week. So very playable for 3 weeks in a row. And he's, a player that, has kind of a long resume of being in the majors, but not as far as being like a difference maker. Would take some walks, top of the lineup, but he's hitting lower now, but he could move up a little bit. Let me see, Cutter Crawford. I need a different Crawford. Let's see here, 30 Crawfords. Let me see. That's probably this. Okay, so J.P. Crawford. So 27-9, 26. A few in 10 or above, and some runner-ups. Most of the runner-up bids are less than 10. So he had another week there, so you could see a little bit higher. But there was a lot of interest to try to fill a gap, and he kind of did that this week. And if he could move up in the lineup, he could have a little more value. So it's more about the at bats with him, and he can sneak a home run. And you're just hoping if you got three runs, 3 RBIs for a week out of him, you did really, really well. That would make him like a 70-70 player, with more home runs than you thought. So realistically, he's a guy that you would think would hit a home run there maybe every other week and maybe 13 to 15 or something like that. But, but he was trending up. Could have had him last week for a little bit cheaper. Let's see here. No, Allen, nothing there. Talked about Baez. Might end up shifting back to shortstop for the Tigers if they send the other player down. I talked about David Hamilton a little bit. Let's look up him weekly. 0 for 12. So Brian Raccio. I don't think he's going to be picked up in leagues. Should be a better player, but he hasn't got there yet. Based on the bats, just really nobody that jumps out, and so nobody stands out from what I see other than Lawler's. I saw his name a little bit lower. So now we're going to go over to outfield. Same thing for at bats. Let's see on the furthest. All right, so Jacob Young, he's a guy that's a streaky base stealer, getting a little more playing time. I did write about him for the other the article. Let's see, I think it's probably an outfield one, so let me go back to that. Outfielders post. All right, so yeah, so he was Jacob Young. Yeah, so over the last week, he's a guy that's potentially could steal, a lot of bags in a week. I think last year in April he stole 12 bases filling in. So over his last 7 days, he's 5 for 20 with 5 runs, 1 RBI, 1 steal. Nothing that stands out there, but he did have 10 walks, 12 strikeouts over 92 player appearances, which is a really good, shows a pretty good approach. Strikeout rate's low, walk rate's high enough, and a few more hits, he would look a little more attractive. He had, he was 7 for 20 and 350. You would be interested, but he seems like he's trending a little bit higher. He should get a little playing time. The Alex Call guy that was getting in his way a little bit has only started 4 times the last 13 games. So I think guy like this is a week, especially in a shallow league, that you can probably get him for free. be a little tougher in the main event. And I know that I had Rojas on a few teams for Philadelphia that when Marsh got hurt, I got him as a cover. Really didn't do what I was hoping. I hoped he'd run a little bit. He did hit a home run, but Marsh is back. So if I'm looking to fill an outfield spot because I have Lowe from Tampa, Josh Lowe on the injured list, and he's not back yet, I might gravitate to a base stealer, try to get a cushion there. So Young would be a player of interest to me if he fell in the right league. I think he's trending up. I actually think he's a better player than most people think, and I think he's be a value there. Let's see what he went for, because that's a pretty good. You don't find these guys that could steal, 40 bases on the waiver wire that often, and then when do you play them? All right, so Jacob last week 13-9. He's only in one league, 13-9, pretty low. But so either that, so the other leagues that he was in. Sorry, that was a drop. Sorry, it's my fault. I didn't go. I wish it would just stay there. So he got dropped. Forget that. Forget that last statement. That's good. Yeah. So he's. I guess he didn't get picked up in any leagues last week. Let me just go one more time. Oh, there it is. It's still a drop. Yeah. So I didn't think it. Yeah, I don't think he was picked up last week. It's kind of a. So, but yeah, so he's like I said, it's a unique skill set, making up speed, and if you get a lot of power and stuff like that, he should be a little more interesting to you. I'm trying to get my mouse back to where it was. All right, so go down to Young. We get past him, 35% free agent. India Yastrzemski. Harrison Bader, 8 for 19. That's pretty good. He had a pretty good week. He's been a guy that was hot for a couple weeks, and then didn't really do much. But he's people kicked him to the curb. No home runs, steals. He only has 2, but he's a guy that should steal more bases and hit a few more home runs. He's not a bad fill-in type player. Not really, what you would consider a difference maker. But if you are trying to bridge yourself to another player, but this is probably like the third cycle of him. He's been in the pool, dropped in the pool, and so somebody probably either had extra outfielders and kicked him to the curb. So I guess that he was a viable option. And Eli White played well, kind of a guy that kicked around in Texas for a while, and had a good week last week. Got picked up for relatively short money, and he had another good week for them, for the Braves, as far as hits wise, 7 for 19. He had 4 runs, was okay. He had a steal, and then 1 RBI, but 2 home runs out of him, figuring he's 30 years old and he doesn't have much of a major league career. Look at that, he's got 52 at bats this year. That's more than he had the last 2 years in the majors. The peak he had 2022. So, you get, that guy would probably most likely get dropped more than he would get picked up, but he did okay last week. So I'm not going to really kind of gravitate to him. The Noel guy for Cleveland, Jankowski, he showed power last year, and he looked like he was going to be a decent player. He just hasn't really kind of done it this year. The strikeouts still pretty high, 20 and 65 at bats. Last year was 83 strikeouts and 179 at bats. But he did hit 13 home runs. But that, he has definitely improved a little bit off of that, but still not high. So, depending on what they want to do in Cleveland, he's hit or miss. There, we're going to keep going down. Brooks talked about him, talked about Baez. Drew Waters strikes out too much. Not going to waste my time. Taylor Isabel, it's at the bottom lineup. He's okay. More of a fill-in guy. Not going to cost a lot of money, and he should steal a few bases. And I'm going to go down to Rosario. I know he had a big game yesterday, but people have chased him around due to injuries, and he kind of didn't materialize, but he's a veteran player. So more of a fill-in. Javier Sonia did all right last week or 2 weeks ago, and he really just didn't have any follow-up for, I think he had a big game. So we had 2 weeks in a row, 6 for 14, 6 for 13, but then he just didn't get enough playing time, doesn't have enough talent, didn't steal enough bases. So kick to the curb there. Alex Thomas, 100% owned. Let's see here, second page. All right, so I want to talk about Lodi Tavares has been really struggling for Texas. So I'm going to go to Texas here. And Evan Carter, where is he? So he's 7% owned, and so he's a player that Texas really liked a couple years ago. And last year I had him in the AL League, and then he ended up being a bust. He got hurt. Started off the year, he was a little banged up, really slow, didn't do good in spring training, and he just went backwards. But Carter is a guy in the playoffs 2 years ago. They were hitting him in the middle of the lineup, and they really liked him. And you thought that would translate into success last year, but like I said, he hurt his back or something. It just didn't kind of develop into a viable player. So he is a player that I would be interested in. So he's 22 years old, and he'll be 23 in late August. He's really young guy. So, and he's definitely a player I wrote about here. Let's see, Evan Carter. So, beginning of the year at AAA, he went 2 for 25, 4 runs, 1 RBI, 2 steals. But he really kind of last 2 weeks, he really heated up. 15 for 52, 9 runs, 3 home runs, 8 RBIs, 4 steals. That's a pretty good player. Strikeout rate still a little high, 25.6. Needs some work. Walk rate is really good. Top of the order walk rate, 14.4. Texas could choose somebody. So, he's a player that should get called up and be a stash. And you want to be ahead of the curve. You kind of like the Mayo got called up, this week, but people got him last week. So this is kind of the same idea with Carter, is that if you have a weakness in the outfield and if you believe in the player, he's kind of a guy that you might be interested. The Tavares guy, 241, for the year, 7 runs, 1 home run, 8 RBIs, 6 steals over 79 bats. Yeah, he could bounce back a little bit, and he's got a little bit of experience. But so Carter is a player of interest. I talk about Benintendi, Varsho, Vargas. These guys are all are most likely 12-team people that would be free agents. So when you're digging in the free agent pool for a 15-team, or just there's not that many opportunities. So, but he's a player that probably could be less than $10 in most leagues. But I would think that if you like him, you could spend a little bit more, and it depends on how much money you got left and what your team need. And let me see if anybody was chasing him last week. He had one person bid $1 for him with no runner-up. So, and that was 235, and it's don't know their team name. So, sometimes you can pick up on somebody. So, but this week I would think I haven't seen anybody really talking about him, but I don't really kind of go outside the box a little bit. But he's a player that I would definitely be interested in if I have some injuries. Collins guy did okay for this week for Milwaukee as a fill-in, but he I think he got a little banged up in one game. So let's see, 3 for 10, 3 for 9 last week, not full-time at bats. Kind of an thing. Garrett Mitchell got put on the DL, so they had an extra outfield spot. Let me just confirm that rather than just leaving you hanging there. Let's see here, Milwaukee Brewers. How far are we on this? 48 minutes. We're doing better than last week, maybe. So I'm pretty close to the end as far as finding a couple outfielders and see who's out there. So Garrett Mitchell's still in the thing. So there is an outfield opportunity for somebody, and he's in the mix. As long as they didn't send him down and traction. Let's see. Yeah, he missed a couple games there and for an injury, but back then. But he's got a hit in 6 of his last 7 games. So a guy that's worth a flyer, a little bit of speed, home runs, a little older prospect. But if you need to put somebody on the list for low money, he would be a guy that's at least viable. Dane Myers is a guy I thought would be a little better. He's been pretty good this week. Just doesn't get, I don't know, they just don't want to commit to him. So it's hard to, invest too much and maybe just put him in for a week or something, see what happens. There's not really anybody else that's getting a lot of playing time. Like I said, I kind of will fall into some other players when I clicking through a list. I didn't even know Tommy Edman went on the DL. So Tommy Edman went on a DL. When did that happen? This is yesterday. So ankle injury. So what are the Dodgers going to do? Let me just check that out, because That would be an interesting opportunity. I know they could play Enrique Hernandez in outfield, but they have on the team, Estory Ruiz in the minors, so that they got Conforto, um, Hernandez, and Pages, Payas or whatever they want to call him, is in the thing, and they called up the Kim guy they got for to move him in the outfield, or second base. So that's interesting. The Kim guy was striking out at too much at AAA. I looked at him earlier. He's 26 years old, played over in Korea. He had 5 home runs, but 32 strikeouts on 29 plate appearances. 19 RBIs, 13 steals. I mean, he could be helpful. His batting average in Korea was 300 every year. But kind of maybe if he could make it in the majors, after some experience, be a 10, 30, 35 guy, maybe a little bit higher with more at bats. But I guess as a fill-in, he could kind of work as a flyer. Does he? I don't know if he qualifies. I don't think he qualifies at outfield at this point. Let me see. Dodgers. I think he was like a middle infielder for them. Let's see here. Last week, no. So I think he's just shortstop. Nope. Second base. Yeah, second base only. So that would be a little more attractive player at second base only. But I wonder what Ruiz is doing for him. He's not really. They prefer to play him like in. He has speed, but they prefer to play him in like a left field or something like that. Let's see what he's doing at. He's 288 at AAA for them with 1 home run, 9 RBIs. He's got 15 steals, 10 walks, 16 strikeouts. That's not bad. So let me see. Let me just get my mouse over here. Sorry, Estory Ruiz. So he's really picked up the pace. You can see right there. His last 11 games, he's hitting 333, 4 walks, 9 strikeouts, 10 steals, 4 RBIs, 10 runs, over 42 at bats. So he's a viable option for them, but I doubt that he's any player pool. But like if he was an AL or something like that, let's see. No, he is. So he's in the player pool. I don't know why he's in the. He might be. Maybe he's just in some leagues. So he'd be a guy that, if he was called up, but I know he hasn't been on the roster at all this year in the majors. So either he was drafted and dropped, or maybe they even had him in the roster at the. I was thinking maybe the beginning of the year when they were in Japan or something like that. But but he has impact speed. And more of a name to keep an eye on, but we'll see what happens with that. So just, sometimes you just run into names. If I was in AL league, I would definitely be, or NL league, I would be seeing, trying to scout out if he was in the pool. Another player, I'll just backtrack a bit in third base. I know Tyler Black wasn't in the pool, but he had like a hamate bone injury for the Brewers. And they had that couple of injuries there that they could use him. And he must be getting close to swinging a bat or something. It says out to 6 to 8 weeks. It was March 18th. So I would imagine, he's the same. They usually come back in about 6 weeks, but there's been no update on him. But I would imagine he's a player that, might emerge at some point this year. So I think that's about for the outfield. The names. Ruiz is the last one. So as far as starting pitching, probably easier for me to go into the skim through the starting pitching rotations for the next week just to see the names, and then go through the list to see if there's anybody that's that stands out. So Ryan Nelson's listed as a potential starter for Arizona this week. I know that he was really he was throwing the ball pretty good in velocity, but he's kind of struggled in first couple of games, gave a bunch of runs, but let me see if he's turning the corner. Like I said, I'm not up to speed on him. I'm sure I should be more prepared for this stuff, shouldn't I? But trying to multitask. All right, let's see here. So he's actually, when you look at the basic, numbers there, 17 innings pitched, 16 hits, 20 strikeouts, 4 walks. That's pretty good. Only 1 home run. He just has a bad ERA from one disaster game that he had April 18th, he gave up 5 runs, another one 4. He pitched 4 shutout innings in the last one. So overall, I mean, he looks like he's throwing the ball a little bit better. His overall numbers, and he said a couple of bad outings, and he hasn't fixed it. Last year, the strikeouts were okay, and the whip was all right. Home runs, not that bad. So I think his velocity was up 95.6. So I think if he potentially could earn more starts, he might be a guy that could be a rotational player in a deep format. But I'm going to try to see just to make sure there's an injury or are they just using it. So Burns is day-to-day with, so he's pushed back with, so that's why they need a starter. So they have him listed, and let's see what Kelly is. He's having cramps, so minor issue. So he's just a fill-in, but, a guy that, you see a name like that popping in, you want to know why, and then you have to dig down. So he's a guy that would potentially be sneaky. I don't really. Sears is a free agent, some 12-team leagues, and I think he's pitching today. But I thought he had double starts and he looked pretty good. And he pitched, a guy that's, A's are scoring a little bit of runs. He should be picked up. Smith-Schwaber actually got pushed back for double starts next week. He actually handled himself well last week for facing I think it was the Dodgers. You just look at that. I think he didn't win the game. Maybe he broke down later on. Yeah. 2 runs over 5 innings, 5 strikeouts. So a pretty good start against the Dodgers. Double start. I'd be willing to take a chance on him, at Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati at home is probably better than being on the road. Grant Holmes bounced back. I still don't believe Elder should be in the rotation. I don't really see much on Baltimore Red Sox. Giolito will make it back, lines up for double starts. I know I wrote about him somewhere here. Let me just go to him. Just to let's see here. Posts. Giolito, his numbers in the minors were really not good this year, but he pitched pretty good in his debut. So Giolito in April was rehab starts. He gave up 10 runs, 18 hits, 13 walks, way too many, 17 strikeouts over 17.1 innings. But in his debut, he gave up 2 home runs to Toronto, had 7 strikeouts over 6 innings, and he had 7 base runners. So other than the home runs, the rest of it was pretty good. The fastball velocity is about league average, and it did peak in 2020, which was a short season, 60-game season. So going to be kind of inconsistent, but a starter's a starter, and he's had success, and he's got a good changeup. So, but it could be some rough patches at the beginning. Double starts faces Texas at home, and then on the road against Kansas City. Not really. Tanner Houck should bounce back. If he was in there, I would go after him in some pools. Let me just see what if he's there. Yeah, he's maybe one league 7%, but he's really bounced back pretty good since the that disaster start. He's given up his last 3 appearances, 3.5 ERA, whip 1.0, 19 strikeouts over 18 innings, but he doesn't have a win on the year. So, but definitely if he was in the free agent pool, I would take a shot on him. I think he's a better player. Like we're at the direction of him last year. And I don't think because he's got a 6 ERA and a bad whip, he's not going to cost a lot of money. Let's see, Colin Ray has pitched pretty good for the Cubs. But I mean, I guess Cade Horton is a talented guy that could get called up pretty soon, and not that he deserves to be demoted or anything, but he's kind of overachieved a little bit. When you look at his, 4.29 ERA, 4.55, the whip was okay for the last 3 years, and he's 34 years old. How long before they kind of catch up to him where he has a kind of a clunker start. So he's been pretty good in all games since he, pitched for the Cubs. Doesn't have a win. Oh, no, he's got 2 wins. Sorry. He's got 2 wins in the last 2 games. So, but he's a guy that, you could put him in for 1 start. He'd have double starts the following week against Miami. He's got double starts the following week in Miami and the White Sox. You talk about 2 pretty good double start weeks. So, but he would be, he's got to be on a lot of rosters because he's pitched pretty good. But we'll look. Let's see on the Cubs. Colin Ray, he's 100% owned, so he's not going to be in any free agent pool. But in the 12-teamer league, if you're looking for double starts, he's going to line up and be a guy that could be a player of interest in a shallower format. And whenever you go to the free agent pool in any format, you are inviting risk, and that could be potentially what happens there. Down to Cleveland, nothing much. See there, it stands out. Colorado, skipping them. I'm skipping the White Sox. I don't care. Maybe Smith's on the team, but I'm not going to even look them up. Nobody on Detroit. Houston, not really much there as far as like being in a free agent pool. Kansas City, same thing. Angels, nothing really changes. And I apologize for Detmers last week. I thought he was getting closer, but man, did that guy get lit up 2 games in a row. Couldn't get anybody up, gave up 9 runs, and he will be pushed in the free agent pool. I wish they didn't have my AL only league. But if I was like Tampa Bay or the Dodgers, be a good week to call the Angels and try to steal them off the roster. Don't really see much on. So Tony Gonsolin is a guy that's in the free agent pool and probably every league here. Let me just see. He had 9 strikeouts in his debut. Let's see, Dodgers. Yeah, let me see. So sorted by strikeouts. Sorry, on this one. Yeah, so he had 9 strikeouts last week. He's going to be a player that so we got Kershaw kind of coming back. Glasnow got hurt. Snell's still going to start throwing again, but he's out for a while. So Tony Gonsolin could potentially like squeeze out even May out of the rotation. They could shorten him up. He hasn't pitched a lot of innings. So, but he's a guy that had a really good ERA like 2 or 3 years ago, battled some injuries. His minor league stats were decent. But he's going to guy that when there's not much out there for starting pitching, he's going to guy somebody's going to take a shot at him. So I would think that, so he's 19% owned. So that means, was he in the leagues picked up last week? And if he was, then he probably was relatively cheap. So there's a good reference point. That's a starting point. It was the top bid was 63 and a runner-up 59. We got a 43-24. Now he did that, has a name, and he pitched a good game as far as like strikeouts. So I would imagine if you're going to be interested in him, that he's going to cost more than $50 in most leagues. I mean, he might slip through the cracks in some, but he's going to be a little more expensive in this this week. There's not much for pitching. You're going to take what you can find, and hopefully and they hopefully pan out. I don't know. Milwaukee has Priester listed as a starter, which is kind of strange because he just got demolished the other day, and I think in a relief appearance and pitched bad. So Milwaukee, did they lose? Let me just because I'm doing my catch-up work right now. So so Woodruff is, let me see where if he pitched his last rehab. So I lost track of him. He hasn't pitched, so he could be pitching today. He's going to pitch on Tuesday, which was so he's not pitching until next Tuesday. So he might be one start away, and then their prospect Henderson. I think he pitched really good in his first start when he got sent back to the minors, and he could potentially be pitching, in the middle of the week. So after getting called up and sent back down, he's pitched 2 games in the minors. I'm sorry. So since he's been sent back down, he's pitched 12 innings, gave up 2 runs, 1 in each game, but 11 strikeouts. So like, why wouldn't he pitch over Priester? That would, Priester's a guy that, and Priester's lined up to pitch on, is it on the 7th? Yeah, it's on the 7th. I would think Henderson would pitch on that day, but how much of a free agent is Henderson in this league? Let's see, Milwaukee. He was picked up, a couple weeks ago for a lot, but some people did kick him in the curb. So he's 7% owned. But I mean, if he's out there, I would be interested because I can't imagine, like I said, Priester, is backing up, and Henderson, I could see him moving in there. Let me just see what Priester did before I move on from this. Last couple games, he gave up 7 runs, and he gave up 12 runs, 2 games, 7 walks, 2 home runs. I can't see any reason why Milwaukee would want to keep him in the rotation. So if Henderson's out there, or even a 12-teamer, it'd kind of be the week to speculate that he gets a start. It might kind of be tricky where Milwaukee has a game on Monday, and you might not be getting him in the lineup. But he would be facing Houston, but I would think that I would be looking for him. Where am I at? I'm at 104. I'm still doing okay in time. Not really much for Minnesota. The Mets, Warren, Wheeler, Falter. This guy for Pittsburgh, was it Moldzinski? Yeah, he's actually bounced back a little bit after. Yeah, it looked okay in his last couple starts, but he has double starts. I mean, if he had to gamble, like 3 of the last 5 starts have been okay, but it's really kind of, will he pitch 5 innings and give you a win? So forget that statement. If this is September, I'd say maybe give it a shot, but not now. And then a guy like that struggles in the first start, and you pick him up for double starts, and then they hook him and he doesn't get the second one. You take a beating. They have RotoWire has Steven Kolick is tentatively to pitch. Yeah, he's nobody. So yeah, I don't think that guy's going to get any chance in starting, but maybe. But it looks like San Diego will need a starter at the end of the week there. Let's see here. San Diego, Seattle. Most of those pitchers are owned except for Evans. And I would think that Birdsong, that Roop's getting close to getting hooked, and Birdsong, getting in. Birdsong would have to get stretched out, but Roop has lined up for double starts, but there. And then Steven Matz is a player of interest, which the wise guys in the 15-team markets have already picked him up in a lot of leagues. But even though he looks like he's attractive, he has a long history of underachieving expectations, and I'm not 100% sure that I would even fight for him in drafts. But yeah, they have 5 starters, and Matt's numbers are pretty good. Let me see what his ownership is. Let's see, Matt's. Strikeouts. I'm looking at San Francisco and I want St. Louis. That's not going to work out too good. So Matz is he's a free agent 42% of leagues. He threw 70-something pitches in the last start, so he's where he could potentially pitch 5 innings. So he stretched out far enough to be picked up. So we had a 68-0 last week. Somebody picked him up. What's going on here? Right? So yeah, and then we got a 68-0, 27-4, 22-0, 18-3, 13-1. So where he's not lined up to start, I would think that he would be in maybe 5 to 15 area, because he doesn't really have a path to a starting job, but he potentially could be a decent stash there. So, but I know, like I said, he's been picked up recently in a lot of leagues. I wonder. So Boyle is really. I think he struck out 10 guys in the last start with no runs for Tampa Bay. But I kind of think that he's. Let's see, Boyle. So he's still 16%. If Boyle was out a free agent in the league, I would pick him up for sure this week, because not that they have a clear cut free agent spot, but he looks really close. So in that 6 innings he pitched, he had 3 hits, no walks. That's really, really impressive for a guy that walked over 5 or 8 batters per 9 not too long ago. Tampa's really kind of worked on his command. 10 strikeouts. So he pitched 6 starts between Tampa and AAA. 1.45 ERA, 0.774 WHIP, 40 strikeouts over 31 innings. He just looked like he's going to be in healthful arm. He's kind of a horse, a big guy, and I guess I must have skipped Oakland's. Yeah, so the Hoagland guy that pitched at the beginning of the week. Sorry about that, I skipped him. But he's a guy that doesn't have a big fastball. Command's really helpful. Really didn't have that great of an ERA, and his WHIP was better in 2022 and 2023. He had 165 strikeouts and 191 innings, 4.23 ERA, 4.27 ERA with a 1.14 WHIP. But this year he pitched really well at AAA. He looked pretty sharp in the major league debut. He got drafted 19th overall in 2020 by Toronto, so he does have some pedigree. So I don't think he's like a slam dunk to be, pitch as well as he did in his major league debut. He gave up run over 6 innings, with 7 strikeouts. But that's what he did in that game is going to kind of drive his price. So I think that he'd be a player maybe that would go in like the 40s or something, like that. But somebody needs pitching and he had success there, they might be willing to pay more. So, but I think that it just, I don't know if he's probably a back end starter, not a frontline starter. And that's kind of a tricky situation there, especially when we did it. So now looks like Toronto's got Eric Lauer, who pitched for the Brewers in the past, lined up to start. Haven't followed him, but that's a name I'm going to have to follow. So they got pitched on the 30th. Gave up 2 runs in 4 innings, 4 walks. 2 walks, 4 strikeouts. Last start and in the minors was on the 24th. He had 5 shutout innings, so he hasn't really pitched since the 30th. So I guess he's gonna, I guess that makes sense. So, but overall in the minors this year, he's 6 walks over 24 innings, 4.5 ERA, 1.25. If you need a double starter, I think that potentially he's, I guess, got to backtrack to see who he was facing. He's the Angels on the road, which is not bad, and then he's in Seattle, which is a pitcher's park. So I would think that he's probably worth a flyer if you really want to go there. An AL only league, like I got Detmers, I would think that he would be an improvement if he wasn't picked up. But guy that's way past where name value. So nobody else really in Washington. So let me just go skim through the list of ownership. Man, somebody cut Shane McClanahan in one league. I think he started throwing. Boyle. Let's see here. All teams. I'm going to list this by. Let's do it by innings pitched for the season, just to see if there's a. Kyle Hendricks, no. Fettner, no. Carlos Carrasco, no. Mikolas, up and down, no. Taijuan Walker, no. Chris Paddock, no. Bryce Elder, no. Morton, no. Corbin, no. So we talked about Matt, talked about Priester. I mean, the Lord guy, no. There's just really not. There's really not much as far as like I said, I listen them by innings pitched, so not by starts. But I'll sort it one other way before I go. Birdsong is 100% owned, so as he should be. Jack Leiter 100% owned. Hancock's been okay. You get a few dollars. I saw him picked up in last week in a few leagues. And let's see here. Yeah, we're getting down to 16 innings. Let me see. Let me do the strikeouts thing just to see. That might be identify somebody. Blake Lively, he got cut. He was okay. I mean, considering his ERA is 3.7, the WHIP's 1.27, that probably matches up where he could be, worthy of a back-end roster spot. Use him. Povich from Baltimore has strikeouts, been up and down, but he hurts you a little bit in WHIP. Let's be reliever. Dean Kramer. Not really getting there yet. Yeah, so that's really not the only other probably, I guess Painter was getting closer. So let me see. Painter's available. I'm not going to go through it all again, but like I said, there's not really much for pitchers. Andrew Painter, he's 39%, but if he happened to be in a player pool, then I would be interested, but I'm not sure. He's not owned in this league, but that doesn't mean he wasn't drafted and he's not out of it. So just to kind of speed this up, I'm at the 1:14. I think that's enough of your time for today. So I only have to talk about Boyle, Gonsolin, Giolito, Hoagland, Huck, Matz. So I talked about most of the pitchers that were there. Like I said, sometimes I'll come across a name later on that's getting a start, but I think that's pretty good for the week. So, a little kamikaze, a little slower pace, a little different than last week, but hopefully this is helpful, and I'll try to get back to the other routine. Not really any much feedback other than Eddie Gillis suggested I say the name a little bit more often, and he'll never listen to this at the end, so he won't hear it. But trial and error. But this saves me a little bit of time. So 3:22, I probably start my waiver wire on my own around 4. Have to write a couple football things tonight, so I'll be pretty busy the rest of the way, and then back to normal next week. But I'll have a lot of football work. So thanks for your time, and good luck on the waiver wire.